You are listening to the Average Pundits podcast on your favorite streaming platform.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Average Pundits podcast, your home of all things Premier League. And today we are coming at you with the Goalkeeper Average Pundits special. We're going to go through some of our best keepers of all time. We're going to go through some of our worst keepers of all time and some of our underrated shouts through the Premier League era. We've gone back and I think we've done quite a bit of individual research, so it should be quite interesting. But as always, I am joined by Reese. How you doing, Reese?
I'm good. You know, in the build up to this one, it's pretty good. Lockdown restrictions have been eased, and everything is going. We're allowing parties of only six. Everyone's still wearing your masks and stuff, but it's been a good week. I've been really excited for this one. To look back at the good old days. Is something that we kind of like to do. So I think the only thing left to do now is get this underway.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll start off with some of our best shouts of all time, because there's going to be a few. Obviously, we'll have to maybe debate between each other of where we're going to go for that number one spot. I think you should take this away. I think you should go for a first shout.
Should I go for my greatest of all time straight away?
Go for your GOAT. Go on.
All right then. So I'll start listing off some Premier League accolades, and I'll see if you can guess it. So he won the Best European Goalkeeper award twice.
Mm-hmm.
He has won the Golden Glove once. He has been in the PFA Team of the Year 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
He is a 1-time Champions League winner and a 4-time Premier League winner. So that gives you a hint that it's not a Liverpool player.
It does indeed.
Who do you think?
It's not my GOAT. I mean, I'm looking at my GOAT stats. It's not him. Did you say 4-time Premier League winner?
4 times.
4 times. I've got a feeling it is Mr. Petr Cech.
It is not. You are wrong.
Ooh.
It's so when I look back at the glory days of football, when my main interest of football, 2005 to 2010, the team that were known for dominating that period, obviously Manchester United. I look back and an absolute baller of a goalkeeper, Edwin Van Der Sar.
You're going for Van Der Sar. Okay, is that your GOAT?
For me, like when I look back at that time period, when I look back at my peak interest of the Premier League, Edwin Van Der Sar is posted all over the place. His obviously before he came to the Premier League, his goal for Ajax, the Champions League win with Man United.
Yeah.
And obviously, you pull a match attacks with 100 club Van Der Sar, you're gassed, right?
Yeah, of course you are, mate. Of course you are.
And he had that amazing, I think, was it the 2007 Community Shield against Chelsea?
Yeah.
And that was a couple months before he then went on and beat them in the Champions League too. So, and obviously conceding 4 against Liverpool at Old Trafford, that's an iconic moment for me.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. But for me, I think Edwin Van Der Sar is just like, I think in terms of like a lot of other people's GOATs, I'm not sure about you, but it's a certain Danish player that also played for Manchester United, and he was just before my time. He was before my time. Petr Cech was also on the same level as Edwin Van Der Sar, but I think that because of his Premier League success and all things that surrounding that, for me at that time period, was like kind of the golden era for me growing up into football. Edwin Van Der Sar is kind of my go-to guy.
Well, it's interesting. You say Van Der Sar. At 313 appearances in the Premier League for United and Fulham, he made 132 clean sheets. And if we look at Peter Schmeichel's record of when he was in the Premier League, obviously he was playing for Manchester United, but then also had a spell at Aston Villa and also controversially at Manchester City. And he made 310 appearances with 128 clean sheets. So Van Der Sar is actually up on the cards in terms of games to clean sheet ratios. And I can totally see why. Obviously, he was the goalkeeper that I grew up with the most watching. I caught the obviously the very, very early days of Schmeichel, and then the kind of the back end of Fabian Barthez between the sticks, predominantly at United. Barthez wasn't terrible. He was okay.
He made a
But
couple blunders though. I was looking at the compilations beforehand, and oh my goodness.
he had a couple, but I think overall, I think he wasn't terrible. I think he just, you replace Schmeichel, it's going to be a job. But obviously, my predominant keeper, like yours, growing up in the Premier League, was Edwin Van Der Sar, and he was nothing short of phenomenal. At the age we got him as well, he was absolutely fantastic. I think he came to us in the 2004-2005 season, I think, or maybe the season after. But whilst he was with us, he was no doubt instrumental to like every success we had, literally everything. He was, if we had such an incredible defense at that point,
Well,
but he
there was
had
a
to be there to pick up the pace.
there was a point where like he came into he came into the United team, and I'm pretty sure you won 3 Premier League titles on the bounce. It was the 06-07 season, the 07-08, and the
Yeah.
08-09 season, which, looking back at the 08-09 season, I thought that's my favorite Premier League season of all time.
Mm.
And if it wasn't for a guy like Edwin Van Der Sar, Liverpool would have won that year because of like Manchester United's incredible defensive record that year.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was nothing short of fantastic in the Premier League, Van der Sar, and obviously now he occupies a very prominent role over at Ajax, and I know a lot of United fans wanted to see him come back to United and occupy a similar role, but there's no doubt of his skills as a goalkeeper, and I can 100% see why he is the GOAT for you. But I mean, my one at the start, I did stay with United, and I did go for Schmeichel. Obviously, a little bit outside of my years, predominantly. Like I said, I caught the end years of Peter Schmeichel, and obviously I grew up having been told how good he was, and then you go back and you watch his highlights and you watch his compilations, and you're there thinking, wow, this guy really was special. And I mean, over his time, like I said, 310 appearances, 128 goals, slightly less than it was for Van der Sar, but I feel like he was just so prominent. He won a Player of the Season in 95-96, and then he's got 5 Premier League titles to his name as well. And overall, he was just in the Premier League for such a long amount of time. And the Schmeichel name in the Premier League is now engraved in as a generational talent, thanks to Casper, who is a fantastic keeper in his own right. He really is a very good keeper. But I think that now the conversation between like the best goalkeepers, there's 3 United keepers which could go in there. There really are. There is another one. I can see you thinking. There is another one. Yeah, a very prominent other one.
You're not talking about De Gea, are you?
Don't be silly. Oh, yes, I am talking about De Gea. Really?
He doesn't even crack my top 5.
Maybe not now, but when he retires, just wait.
He will be regarded as one of the best goalkeepers, one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League era, but I don't think he'd crack the GOAT conversation. Absolutely not.
When it's all said and done at United, I think we'll have to look at the stats, and I think we'll have to assess. We really will.
I'll still know him as the guy that when he first came to United, he couldn't settle in and he stole some donuts from Tesco's.
He did do that, but donuts, whatever. In the
To be
past.
fair, their bakery section is top notch.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, Manchester's really passionate about the bakery section, man.
To be fair, they're red velvet cookies. Everyone go and try their red velvet cookies.
There we go. But I mean, if you look at De Gea, 337 appearances in the Premier League, 122 clean sheets. That's not bad. There may not be as many accolades on his list, and a lot of United's successes when we had Van der Sar and when we had Schmeichel were they can be attributed to all of the accolades underneath those particular keepers. But the only thing I will say is that during those eras, United also had a stacked team around Schmeichel and around De Gea. Around Schmeichel, we had a treble-winning team around Schmeichel. We had, sorry, not De Gea, Van der Sar. We had Ronaldo, Tevez, Rooney in that classic kind of like 07-08 season.
Yeah.
So, they had some players around, and De Gea has not had the same caliber. He has had to deal with a very different United team. And I think that also a United team with a very poor defense over the years. And I think to have the kind of record that he does have, personally for me, he has to be included in this conversation. He's still playing, but he's got years to come, and he could also go. I mean, he's already got more appearances than Schmeichel and Van der Sar at United. So I'm wondering, man. I'm wondering he may be able to kind of make some more for himself. But he's also included as my kind of like secondary in the conversation. But Schmeichel probably is my GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it's like looking back at the fun out. Like, yeah, you look at when Cristiano Ronaldo was just breaking into this United team, the exciting play that he brought. You're looking back at that United team, and it's all rose, as I said, rose tinted glasses. Whereas for me, De Gea is not quite there because of like everything surrounding this current Man United team as well. Like, yeah, he's a really good keeper, but he's also he hasn't brought that as many titles as Schmeichel and Van der Sar did. They've won a Europa League, but they're yet to win a Champions League as this side. They've won some Premier League titles, but not as many as. And you do mention that they had some great squads behind Schmeichel and Van der Sar, but this current United team could arguably be coming up to be as good. You've got world class players in this side. So obviously not all of them are the caliber of that say 08, 09 season. You don't have the likes of Dimitar Berbatov coming off the bench, but in terms of you've got Paul Pogba, Aaron Wan-Bissaka at the moment. Luke Shaw is arguably one of the best left backs in the world right now. De Gea is still kind of on top of his game. His confidence definitely dropped after the 2018 World Cup, that's for sure. But
yeah,
slowly starting to find that again.
Well, 100%. I mean, this is the best United team we've had post Ferguson. This is the best United team that we've had. It's more well-rounded. It's the most well-rounded it's been in a long time because we have had to deal with some awful teams, awful lineups, and some very debatable signings which have come and gone pretty quick. So this is 100% the most well-rounded United team that we've had post Ferguson. And I feel like if we had the players in front of De Gea that Van der Sar or Schmeichel had, it would be a different story. But those are Schmeichel and De Gea as my first two shouts. Obviously, you had Van der Sar. Do you have another shout to potentially add into the GOAT conversation?
I have like 5 or like 4. So I'll list them off quickly. Peter Schmeichel would have been my GOAT if I was about 5 years older. Just because I'd have caught the back end of Schmeichel's career, I'd have been like, oh my god, this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
I've got no doubts about how good he was. I just, he was great on the ball. He, for me, he was more known for, when I first started knowing about Peter Schmeichel, it was like, oh, it's the goalkeeper that scored goals.
Yeah.
It's the only reason why a lot of people know Rogero Ceni.
Yeah.
So the main reason why people know him is because he scored free kicks. Pete Schmeichel scored goals. So yeah, I think he was just kind of a bit before my time getting into football. Next, I think Petr Cech. I think Van der Sar and Petr Cech's ability levels are just as good. I think Cech didn't quite have the team behind him like Van der Sar did. But again, helmet boy, helmet memes.
Well, I mean, in terms of having the team, I mean, I'd almost counter that. I think Chelsea were absolutely dominant. If it wasn't United, it was Chelsea. I mean, he made 443 appearances in the Premier League, Petr Cech, 202 clean sheets. That is more than Schmeichel. That's more than Van der Sar. Obviously, there just isn't as many. Well, I was going to say there wasn't as many accolades, but there is.
He's got accolades to back him up, but I just think when looking back, I grew up kind of disliking Chelsea.
Well, I mean, they were, because I think it was United and Chelsea. I think both of those clubs, if you weren't a fan of those respective clubs, they were the Bond villain clubs to hate.
Well, I think Chelsea were more because they came in under Abramovich in 2005 and started building that upon his investment. Whereas United kind of had the world-class manager to build them as well. Because I still think Alex Ferguson probably is the greatest manager of all time because of that.
No question.
Exactly. So next on the list is an Arsenal invincible, Jens Lehmann.
Yep.
Can't really look past him. I think he was a great keeper, especially because he's now etched in history forever as the first ever starting goalkeeper to go undefeated in a Premier League season. Forever known as one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League era. And obviously, looking through rose-tinted glasses, this guy played at my peak adoration for Fernando Torres. It's Pepe Reina, just because I don't know. I love his bald head, and when I still see him playing for Napoli and Lazio and all those teams in Italy, I still find a soft spot for him. And especially when he came back to play for Aston Villa, I was like, "Come on, Pepe!"
Yeah, it was good. It was good seeing him back. And Pepe Reina is a very competent Premier League goalkeeper. I don't know if he'd be in my GOAT conversation, maybe, but I mean, he won he won like 3 Golden Gloves.
Exactly, and like I would argue he's one of the best penalty savers in the Premier League era. He was so good at saving from the penalty spot, and I
Yeah.
think that maybe he went a bit underrated at the time. Obviously there was a time where it was Petr Cech and Van Der Sar were all in the goals, but Pepe Reina was definitely up there, and I think that he was integral to our building post, getting rid of Jerzy Dudek.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you knew this or not, but less appearances than both Schmeichel and Van Der Sar in the Premier League, and actually more clean sheets.
There we go.
Not
He's the GOAT. He's the GOAT.
Not the honours to maybe back up the full conversation, but yeah, there is some legs there. So maybe more legs than I first thought.
He's got legs and safe hands.
And safe hands. No, he is a fantastic goalkeeper, and he has been floating around that conversation for a very long period of time. So I think maybe he does get a bit disrespected. I think maybe just in case, for Liverpool fans idolise him, the Villa fans are going to love him, the Everton fans are going to hate him. So
Sunderland fans also love him because of the beach ball incident.
Yeah, that was just one of the weirdest moments in Premier League history. That was. But, one other keeper that I thought would be interesting to include in this conversation. I think there's still quite a long way to go, and there would have been a long way to go. I'm not sure if we're going to see that from him, but I also think it's one of those goalkeepers where it's like, what if the success was there? I think you have to credit what Lloris has done at Tottenham. He's been in that role for a very long period of time. Obviously, club captain, very weirdly club captain. Very competent club captain for France as well. But everyone just always associates Tottenham with Kane, I guess. So I think it still rubs some fans the wrong way. But and his time at Tottenham, 289 appearances and 102 clean sheets. That's not terrible. It's not terrible. I think if he had maybe a little bit more time at Tottenham, that could go up a bit. But obviously, I think the reason why that isn't more clean sheets is because of Tottenham's, a bit of a leaky defense as well, especially this season.
Yep.
But it's one of those situations where it's like, well, I wonder what could have been. Maybe if he was at a Chelsea or a United in those dominant years, potentially Liverpool, it could have been a different situation.
Definitely, I think if you bring a Lloris in with a very competent back four, not even just like a world-class back four, but a really good back four. You look at the seasons where he had Alderweireld and Vertonghen as his centre backs, and I think it was like the 15-16 season, and they were playing phenomenally.
Yeah.
And I think that you look at that team that year when they were on the cusp of winning the the Premier League, sorry. And they had a very, very good team, and Lloris was mainly part of that. So you look back at that team, and you look back at his career, and you think, yeah, he could be one of the greats, but he's not on my top 5.
I think if we were looking at it based on some, there were some great shouts in this conversation, but I feel like Petr Cech, Schmeichel, and Van Der Sar kind of reign supreme. I think they'd be a lot of people's top 3. But it's what order to go in. I wonder if we can decide on a definitive order before we move on.
Well, before that, we have some Instagram suggestions that kind of agree with us here, and so we got 34R1E. That kind of spells Earl with numbers. Who says Schmeichel, Van Der Sar, and also David Seaman.
Yeah, Seaman's a good shout.
And I think that for me, David Seaman, I can't put it past him letting in that free kick against Ronaldinho. So. He doesn't quite crack it for me.
Yeah, I think obviously that's definitely one of his big blooper reels. But he was again a very prominent Premier League keeper. Outside of our years, really. But one for the history books, one for the GOAT books. He loves a Soccer Aid appearance as well. Although tell you what, he's been. Was it Sergio Pizzorno from Kasabian who chipped him? Was it David Seaman in goal? I think it was.
More than likely, it's David Seaman, isn't it?
Yeah, he's done it. I think Serge has done it twice against David Seaman. But anyway, that was, if you haven't seen that goal, go and watch Sergio Pizzorno from Kasabian score that goal. It is ridiculous. Anyway, moving on.
Oh god, yeah, he was kind of before my time, but also renowned for probably being the goalkeeper with the best facial hair in football history. So
Could well be.
there we go. And then we got two shouts for Schmeichel, and that's Jake Burns and Lee Wills, both of those saying that the big Danish guy is probably their goats, and Jake Baldwin 06 with Petr Cech. So that kind of fits in, all four people saying kind of rounded out top three.
Yeah, I mean, it's very telling, isn't it? I think you'd have to be living under a rock to not recognise what those three have done in the Premier League, and obviously Schmeichel kind of walked. I think Schmeichel kind of crawled so the following keepers could walk. So I think he was kind of the starting gun, I think, to fire off this kind of debate.
Although when Schmeichel left, I know that you instantly go to Fabian Barthez, but there was a stepping stone in between that I'll get onto later.
I am also going on to that stepping stone. Don't you worry. We know that stepping stone. That stepping stone is present. Don't you worry about it. But, yeah. I think for me personally, I'm trying not to look at it, too. It's so hard because I want to just say Schmeichel, Van Der Sar, CECH. Not even just because of the United situation, just because of what I remember. Van Der Sar obviously could even go first, but I think we got Schmeichel's best years. I think, and so okay, I'm going Schmeichel, Van Der Sar, CECH. That's what I'm going as, but it could be that could be moved around. That could be CECH, Van Der Sar.
I'd probably say Van Der Sar. I mean, I guess Schmeichel, just because obviously I've seen his tapes, I've seen his highlights, I've seen how good he is. Yeah. But I feel like the nostalgia is not quite as there with Schmeichel for me.
Yeah.
Whereas I look back at the 08-09 season, I see Van Der Sar in the nets against Liverpool, and you're like, oh, the good old days.
Yeah.
So I think it'd probably go Van Der Sar, Schmeichel, Petr Cech there, just because it's interchangeable. Both of those United keepers are going to go down as some of the greatest Manchester United goalkeepers of all time.
Yeah, definitely. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys think. Cech, Van Der Sar, or Schmeichel as your GOAT of all time. But moving on, shall we maybe go to some underrated goalkeepers in the Premier League?
You know what? I think we should do that.
Yeah. There is one prominent. I don't have too many for this, but there's one prominent name that I have in mind, and I assume you have him as well. But he's a Premier League legend at the end of it. I think he really is a Premier League legend. He was just with us in the Premier League for us. By that I mean with United and also with Everton for so long. Tim Howard, 399 club appearances and 132 clean sheets. Three assists and a goal he's got on his record as well. If he was with United for longer, maybe he could have had more accolades on his record, but there's no titles I think that he has attributed to him, but he has such a fantastic Premier League record.
Yeah, definitely. You look at him. He's provided some of the best Premier League moments of all time. He's been one of the most enjoyable people to watch. He probably has like one of my joint favorite moments in the Premier League where he scored that huge, where he scored that goal from his own box. Basically, he was. I think he was the second ever goalkeeper to do that in the Premier League.
Was the first Paul Robinson?
Paul Robinson.
Yeah.
Who is actually on my underrated list.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah.
Just because, again, looking back at that time period, you're playing FIFA 06, you're maybe playing as Spurs. You've got Paul Robinson in net. It's all this whole podcast for me is nostalgia trips for 2005 to 2010. I'm just going to glorify that whole time period.
Yeah. But yeah, Tim Howard, 100%. That I had to include him on there. And then another one that I'd say probably underrated. I think there was quite a long period of time where he wasn't necessarily he was the guy, but I think people look at him a little bit now and kind of forget what he did do. So I think you have to put Joe Hart in there, don't you?
Yeah.
340 club appearances in his Premier League career, 127 clean sheets, and an assist on his record. So, you know, Joe Hart, I mean, right now he's chilling at Tottenham. He's Tottenham second. He was at Burnley as well. He had a very difficult time. He went over to it was Roma, wasn't it? He was out for quite a while.
I think it might have been Torino.
Was it? Oh yeah, you're right. It was Torino. Because I remember obviously him doing his press conference. I know he was learning Italian. He actually did a lot better than some English players moving abroad in their press conferences.
I've even seen Sancho is putting on the German accent now.
I saw that video on Twitter, and I genuinely couldn't believe it. I thought that was shocking. That was.
He's just a second-rate Joey Barton.
Yeah, second-rate Joey.
But yeah, Joe Hart. I guess his agent told him he was moving to Turin, and was like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting the Juventus move." Nope.
Nope. You know. But I mean, Joe Hart, whilst he's been in the Premier League, rather, 4 Golden Gloves to his name and 2 Premier League titles. If if it wasn't for just the caliber of some of the players, he could be included in some conversations. But his career did get very prematurely. He could have carried on for a lot longer at a high level. But obviously, Manchester City, there was other plans. Pep had other plans. But fair play to him. He's at Tottenham now. You think he's in a cushy position, and he's only 33. He's still got a few more years in him, I think. So, he might even be able to get a move somewhere and be the number one again. So, we'll have to see. But Joe Hart, 100% for me as well. What about you? What about you for some of your underrated keepers?
And I've got some kind of memey underrated goalkeepers. Carl Walker was a pretty competent goalkeeper when he played in the Champions League. And big old Harry Kane. Harry Kane saved a free kick when he went in goals for Tottenham in the. I think was it the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup?
I better be hearing Rio Ferdinand and John O'Shea here.
Nah, it's Phil Jagielka instead.
Oh, Jags.
I think he went in goal for. I think he went in goal for both Sheffield United and Everton in his career.
What a man!
Just the willingness. I guess Rio Ferdinand. I'm not a big fan of John O'Shea, but Rio Ferdinand can go in there because he's a baller.
John O'Shea, man. Well, yeah, he was a baller, mate. Underrated
player. we'll maybe include him in the underrated section, the centre backs.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, there's some good shouts for those. But do you have any other ones?
No, not really. I kind of used all of my effort on Harry Kane and Carl Walker.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to credit him, don't you? You have to credit him. But I
the
think
players that played in goal. I mean, as someone that played, under what was it, under 16 goalkeeper level, it's hard. It's hard to move from right back to goalkeeper.
My other underrated shout was actually Pepe Reina. I think just because he didn't have as many accolades on his system, but he did deserve crediting. So I think Pepe Reina is also in the conversation there.
His name will always be tied with a beach ball, and it's annoying.
I had a couple of other names for goalkeepers that I just think maybe deserve some kind of shout. I mean, one of them is kind of just like because I think it's kind of funny, but like anyway, I'll go for one. Elio Gomez. Keep in mind he hasn't been the greatest keeper. He hasn't been the greatest, but he has been a Premier League veteran. 195 appearances in the Premier League. He's been in the league since 08-09, but I assumed he was there for longer. But 08-09, he came to Spurs, and then since then he was also been paying his trade for Watford. So I feel like he's just one of those other guys that maybe deserve a shout out. Oh, you've been here for a while, but he isn't the greatest. I mean, 195 appearances in the Prem, 53 clean sheets. So there's a lot of other kind of doubts on his record, but I feel like he 73 wins, 75 losses. That's not too out of it,
I feel like if you're a Spurs goalkeeper, that tally should be way more. If you get what I mean, like when you're at a club like Spurs, I just think he was so bad. For me, looking back, he was poor at Spurs, and then they had to bring in Hugo Lloris to pick up the pieces. I think that he kind of redeemed himself towards the end of his tenure in the Premier League with Watford.
Yeah, at Watford, that's where I think most of his highlights were.
Yeah, but like I think if you're looking for like underrated goalkeepers, a lot of your time spent in the Premier League, it's going to be like in the top 10 teams. You know,
Yeah.
yes, he played for Spurs, but he didn't play well for Spurs. Like there were so many blunders that he'd made. You know, those compilations of Gomez making mistakes for Spurs, and it's just, I think at Spurs, it's you ask Spurs fans, I doubt they rate Gomez at all.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to hear their opinions, but I feel like a lot of them would credit him. I think because just he was there during that kind of like Tottenham. I say rebound. I said like the start of them kind of showing more prominence. But the other person that I had just to mention, he isn't in any rated or underrated, or he's not even in the worst of all time because he wasn't terrible, but he's just a weird keeper in the Premier League. Costel Pantilimon. You remember Costel?
the 6'8", like Andre the Giant-esque guy.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, he was just a strange one. 54 appearances, 17 clean sheets. And he had 14 wins and 23 losses. I assumed he was in the Premier League for longer. I thought he had more appearances to his name, but he was a Premier League winner in 2013-14 with Man City.
He was the reserve goalkeeper, wasn't he?
Yeah. No, he needs to flex it. He made 7 appearances that season in the Premier League for him. So, fair enough. And then obviously,
big up the stick insect.
Yeah, I mean, I remember him the most prominently from when he was at Sunderland.
Yeah,
that's where I remember him most prominently. Like, if I could think of Costel Pantilimon in a shirt, it would be a Sunderland shirt.
Yeah.
But then obviously, like Elio Gomez at Watford as well. But just an interesting keeper to mention. But he's not in any lists for me. I just thought, let's mention Pantilimon.
Yeah. I mean, I love him. Just the fact is, he's just one lanky guy. You know, we love all the guys that are over 6 foot. I mean, Pope's almost just as tall as him. To be fair, I think Pope's like 6'7" or something like that.
Is he really?
I might just be making this up and fabricating it here, but I think that Pope's massive.
He is proper. He's the tallest keeper that we have, but I wasn't sure if he was that up there.
Maybe he's not. Maybe I'm just making it up. Why is he? He's 6'3". He's not even close.
Yeah, I was going to say that when it sounded interesting, but it didn't sound like the heights of Pantilimon to me.
My apologies to Pantilimon. I disrespected the name of the god.
But
I'm not worthy.
Yeah, we would love to know some of your guys' opinions on underrated keepers in the Premier League. I'm moving on now. It's just our kind of final segment. We have some of our worst keepers in the Premier League. We don't want to. We don't take any enjoyment from this at all. We just want to.
I did. I did.
You mentioned one earlier. Should we get that out of the way?
Yeah. Probably one of the worst goals let in of all time.
Yeah. Go on.
It's you know what? I'll let you, because I'm not actually like. I don't think I could pronounce his name really. His last name is kind of throwing me off a little bit.
Massimo Taibi.
There we go.
That's how I would personally pronounce it. The Italian who was brought in to replace Schmeichel. Well, pretty much replace Schmeichel. He's brought in the 99-2000 season, and he only made 4 appearances for United in the Premier League. And it just, if you've seen his highlight reel, he is regarded as one of the worst in the Premier League. He had 1 win, 1 loss, and the rest was made up in draws. But he didn't make a save at all. No punches, no catches, no throwouts, no goal kicks. I'm reading the Premier League stats. No goal kicks.
Maybe you got all the, like, so in Sunday League, right? I used to play in goal, and sometimes we'd have the centre back taking the goal kicks.
Of course, yeah.
So maybe that might have been United's tactic: get the centre backs on the goal kicks.
Maybe. Well, I mean, that was definitely a shout. For as many great keepers United have had, there've been a couple of duds in there. There's another dud that I'm going to mention. Yeah, I think he has to be in that conversation. He has to be.
You search up his name, and it's the goal from Matt Letizia I think it was 3-3 by the end of the game, and it was that goal that was like the most infamous for Tybee's career.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, go and find it on YouTube.
It's definitely on YouTube. In the build up to this, I searched every single player on this list to make sure I looked at how bad they were.
It is truly shocking. But moving on, one other poor shout that I was going to mention. It might be a bit cruel almost, but I just have so many poor memories of his time in the Premier League. It's another United keeper, and it's one that's far more recent, and it's Victor Valdez.
Yeah.
So I think that often gets forgotten that we actually had Victor Valdez in the Premier League. Obviously, he played for Middlesbrough as well, but United had Victor Valdez in the Premier League, and Victor Valdez is one of the most prominent keepers in Barcelona history. He was just, he had a terrible injury for Barcelona and was just frozen out by the club in a pretty, cruel regime. I think a lot of the fans and the players wanted to keep him around, but the club wasn't having it. So he came to United, only made 2 Premier League appearances for us. I think one of them was actually coming on as a sub. But in the Premier League in total, he made 30 appearances, 28 of those being in Middlesbrough. And he had 30 appearances, he had 9 clean sheets, which isn't terrible. But I think when you think of the prominence of who he was before he came to the Premier League, it makes coming to United all the more his move all the more disappointing. And also, he came to United with the expectations that he was going to challenge for number 1. And he did, 100%. No one can tell me that he didn't. And I don't know what planet he was on. I don't know what he was thinking, but David De Gea was the number 1 keeper in the world at that time. You were brought in as a relative backup to De Gea, and a friend who spoke the language.
Want to ease him into the squad.
Yeah, and he could have been at United for a long time. He could have been, he could have challenged for the second place, for the first spot. You never know, but it was seemingly very unlikely. But he was a perfectly competent keeper behind De Gea. But whilst he was there, he just clearly wasn't happy. He was getting League Cup appearances. I think he made FA Cup appearances, but it wasn't enough for him, and he was getting clearly aggravated by it. So he couldn't remain at the club. He couldn't be there. No. I think United landed so well on their feet when we got Sergio Romero as the second keeper after him, because he is, I also would say, is underrated, and maybe not in a conversation for Premier League. I think maybe of all time, I think he has had a good career. But Victor Valdez, for me, I have to put him in there as well, because his attitude just wasn't there as well. It just wasn't there for me.
He was among those keepers that, like, they were world class around the world, and then they came to the Premier League and started doing bad. It's like him and I think Julio Cesar when he signed for QPR.
Tell you what, I didn't think about him. Julio Cesar he played for QPR. Crazy.
Yeah, exactly. One of the best goalkeepers that ever played in Italy.
Yeah.
One of Brazil's number 1 for a long time.
Yep.
Played in many World Cup games. He played he played in a back four with Cafu. He's an unbelievable goalkeeper. And then he comes to QPR and pretty much ruins his reputation.
Yeah.
So
I forgot about him.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people did. They kind of slept on Julio Cesar, but that's because he wasn't great in the Premier League. He just wasn't. It wasn't his time.
No, definitely not. I mean, those are kind of my poor shouts from you from the Premier League. I went with United. I went with what I knew there, but I don't know about yourself.
So I have a couple. So I'll go from like my top 5, from in reverse chronological order, ending with my worst goalkeeper, Peter Enkelmann. Okay. Obviously known for being renownedly bad at Aston Villa. I think it was a throw-in from Olaf. Was it Melberg? I can't remember, but it was a throw-in for Aston Villa, and he let it in.
Yeah,
it was terrible. I just remember like looking back. I remember him being really bad for Aston Villa.
It's only really Aston Villa it was Aston Villa and Blackburn he made appearances for in the Prem, wasn't it?
Yeah, he wasn't really prominent in the Premier League, but he was definitely poor. He was bad.
See, I just read something shocking. he was at Blackburn on loan in the 2003-2004 season and made 2 appearances. And he was at the club until 2008. And those are the only appearances he made for Blackburn. He made 2. That's it.
I mean, if you're gonna hold a career in, and just earn money sitting on the bench, I would do it.
I mean, why not? Yeah. 54 appearances and only 13 clean sheets he had. I think he's one of those keepers which you could argue, oh, that's maybe not enough appearances, but it's mainly the caliber of the errors he did make, because he is included. If you go and watch videos on YouTube and stuff, you will find him in like 9 out of 10 lists. He will be in those lists, so I can 100% see that shout from you there.
All of these goalkeepers you will probably find in all lists of the worst goalkeepers of all time.
Who else have you got?
Including Kostas Chakilas. I'm probably doing his name a very big injustice, and I'm sorry, people, but he played for Portsmouth in 2005, the season just before, I think, their heroics in the FA Cup, and playing at peak Loire. So I think one of these things I think it was a game against Arsenal, and he let in an own goal. And I think was it in the same game, his teammate also let in an own goal, scored an own goal, and he hit his own teammate.
Yeah, that'll get you in there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think he just I think a lot of people would have said that he's their number one. I just remember looking back at him and be like, what he is on something,
Yeah.
he's on that Maradona stuff, and I just think he was an absolute weirdo. He was mental. Like, he was more known for starting fights than he was saving shots.
Yeah. I mean, was it only did he only have 5 appearances for Portsmouth?
Yeah, he did. But he when you make 5 appearances for Portsmouth, it's Portsmouth at the end of the day. It's not Man United.
Well, no, I mean, he made 32 appearances for the national team over his career as well. He's been around. Yeah, he's had a lot of teams on his record. Mainly, a bit weird that he managed to find his way to Portsmouth. I mean, the rest of his career really has been in Greece. I think he had a little stint over in Spain as well after, but that was very short-lived. But a bit weird when you have a career goalkeeper playing in their own country and finding their way over to the Prem without really any deep dive into their stats. I think it's an interesting move.
Well, you look at him, he was the Greece first choice goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And he was just coming off, I'm pretty sure, was it Euro 2004? So, he played in Euro 2004 and comes to Portsmouth and as a shocker.
Yeah.
So, and punches his own teammate. So
again, like I said, that'll definitely get you on there.
My next one is Stephen Bywater.
Okay.
So,
Stephen Bywater,
who is kind of probably most well known for his stint at Derby in 2007-2008 season, which is arguably the worst Premier League side to ever grace the league, ever. It
was a shocking team.
Captained by Robbie Savage, your team's going to go back down. Yeah, Robbie Savage thought he was one of the greatest of all time. He was probably one of the worst captains of all time. He was terrible, and he's got an ego to fit. But I think, Stephen Bywater, he's not number one here because there's another keeper on here. Obviously, Tybee as well is on this list, but Bywater, my God.
I mean, he could be number one. 24 Premier League appearances and only 3 clean sheets.
Yep.
That is very, very weird. And obviously, but the majority of his career he spent at West Ham. And then it was, like you said, it was Derby where he made the most appearances of his career in the Premier League. He had 18. But then whilst he was at West Ham, he only made 5 appearances between 1997 and 2007.
Yep.
My God, that is genuinely terrible.
Imagine being a backup goalkeeper for the most of your career, and then you're asked to be a first choice goalkeeper. It's just weird for me. And obviously, I've just skipped over Tybee because we discussed him at length. But this is kind of like a joint first in a way. Bywater's kind of joint first with Roy Carroll, who was also the goalkeeper in 2007 to 2008 for Derby County.
Yeah, Roy Carroll. What a guy. Also another United,
Yeah.
another United former keeper.
I doubt he ever played in the Premier League for United, right?
No, I think he made like 20 odd, 20 set, 21, 22. He probably made around the early 20 appearances for United.
What?
No, he was he did make appearances, man. I think it was
Surely it wasn't just in the League Cup.
No, it was in the Premier League. He made like 26 appearances in 2004, 2005 for Carroll. He was briefly, I think, probably a transition keeper for number one, I think, due to injury and stuff.
Oh my goodness.
He was, Premier League champion as well.
Oh, you've just thought about that. He's a Premier League. I don't care. He was like the most prominent keeper in Derby County's worst ever, like the worst ever season from a team. Worst ever performance for a goalkeeper in the Premier League.
He made 14 appearances at Derby, 12 at West Ham were the first season, and 19 the first season rather, and 12 the second season at West Ham. So, but before that, it was the majority of his Premier League playing career was at Manchester United. The majority of his appearances.
Yep, Premier League titles aside, like I would say he's arguably the worst Premier League champion, the worst player to hold a Premier League medal, and Costil Pantilimon has a Premier League medal.
I'm sure we could probably find some other weird ones, but obviously that's another podcast in general.
That is definitely another podcast. The worst players ever to hold a Premier League medal.
Yeah, so if you guys would like to see that, you should actually let us know, because I think that'll be a very fun one to do.
Let us know.
But yeah, Roy Carroll, yeah, I can see it. I can definitely see it.
It's kind of a joint first between Stephen Bywater and Roy Carroll, just for that season at Derby.
I think that 94 appearances, 28 clean sheets. That's not fantastic, but I think I just can't get over Bywater. I can't get over it. That is obscenely poor stats from him. Obscenely poor. So, I mean, if you guys have any other shouts of players that we may have missed out on, please do let us know. But do you agree that Stephen Bywater and Roy Carroll could be some of the worst Premier League keepers we've seen in the modern era? Do you agree? But as always, guys, thank you very much for tuning in to this goalkeeping podcast special. A bit of a different episode that we went for, but we think hopefully it's some good, interesting content for you, and we would love to keep this kind of video up. So please do show us some love, show us some support if you're a fan of this video. And as always, you can get a hold of us on Twitter at Pundits Average, on Facebook and Instagram at The Average Pundits. And if you're listening to this on your favorite streaming service platforms, do give us a follow on there to let us know whenever our new podcasts are released. And the all important final one, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like and please click the subscribe button, because we are nearing 150 subscribers. That'll be a huge little personal goal for us. So thank you very much. And we are also nearing 10,000 total views on the channel, which is absolutely crazy considering, we're probably like a year and 3/4 old. The Pundits is now, which is crazy again to think of. But 10,000 views in that time, absolutely crazy. But thank you as always, guys. Reese, what can we say there?
Well, I mean, no, the second anniversary is coming around soon enough as well. Oh my goodness! Oh, it's scary. We're getting old.
Yeah,
I'm already starting to feel the greys. But yeah, no, this has been a fun podcast. Just before we head out, I just wanted to list off a couple of my favorite goalkeeper moments. Obviously, Paul Robinson's goal. Obviously, he walked so Begovic and Tim Howard could run.
Yeah.
I think Jagielka going in goal, in the Premier League, Rio Ferdinand, all the players that went in goal. Paddy Kenny and his trackies. Just look at him, like he's a great, and he's got one of the best goalkeeper names, Paddy Kenny. It's such a great name. Rob Green at the World Cup in 2010. Butterfingers.
That's one of the great moments. That's got to be
I remember reading Match magazine at the time, and they had a sketch where it was Rob Green and Joe Hart was sour about not getting the number one spot, so he buttered his gloves. I was like, that's such a why hasn't someone done a sketch on that?
Fantastic.
And then obviously, Schmeichel's goal for Aston Villa, and Sadio Mane paying homage to Eric Cantona by kicking Edison in the face. And that's it.
Fantastic. If you agree with Reese's moments, do let us know, guys. But we'll end on that happy note. Thank you very much, as always, and we will see you next time.
For the latest football content, subscribe to The Average Pundits on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite streaming service and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.